Hello everyone, this is Son of Winter Dong Yang. I'm here again to share Singapore supernatural stories. Today's episode is not on supernatural or superstition events or belief like feng shui and 碟仙. I'm going to share a true ghost story that happened in Singapore recently. It happened to a friend of my friend who shared this story when he was a clerk in the Singapore Army. People from overseas may not understand this. In Singapore, all men have to serve 2 years of national service. And we are in a rather haunted part of the world, the Southeast Asia, as it is a region diverse in culture and religion. And that just means whatever happened to us here is really diverse. If you ask anyone who have been in SAF nicely enough, they will tell you about the weird happenings they see out in the field. People suddenly disappear in the middle of the jungle and turn up hours later, confused because a ghost decided it would be fun to hide them in an alternate dimension. They tell you, hey, never bring pork to certain camp and to run like hell if you smell jasmine. There was an urban legend I shared previously where a recruit at Singapore Basic Military Training Center in Pulau Tekong who disappeared on a road march and turned up with his organs laid out beside him in an orderly manner. And they need to create a third door to allow the spirit to move on. Unfortunately, this story starts with a clerk in the army unit. This is the story. I never got to go outfield myself. I have a medical condition and the SAF assigned me a desk-bound job. I was a clerk in an army unit, which I shall not share here, which means long hours pushing paper to make sure our soldiers had what they needed when they were out in the field. It was a boring job most days, but it turned out that the weird shit doesn't just happen in the jungles. As clerks, we didn't have bunks. We were officially entitled to one, but our hours, which nominally lasted from 7:45 a.m. to about 6:30 p.m., meant that we got to go home every day because there wasn't enough bunks to justify giving us one. Occasionally, though, we had to work late to deal with emergencies, like if there was an exercise the next day and one of the commanders decided they needed something done urgently, we have to stay late into the night to fix the problem. Our solution was to bring some inflatable sleeping mats to the office, so we didn't have to waste time going home late and could actually get more sleep than we would have at home. We also kept snacks around in case anyone got hungry. Not strictly by the book, but our sergeant major didn't care. Once, one of the other clerks in the office had to stay late. He went for dinner at the camp cookhouse, and when we returned, he found a fist-sized hole in our cupboard ceiling right above his desk. His stationery closet was covered in dust from the ceiling, and a pack of biscuits in his box had been taken. I found out about this when he texted me a picture of the biscuits and asked if I've done it. I told him it was probably a rat. He lived far enough away that he decided to risk sleeping in the office, but he decided to sleep on an office chair to be safe. The next day, we laid glue traps for the rat to come in every corner if it does so. You have to understand, we wasn't planning on being inhuman. Those were the only ones in the office storeroom. The rats continued about its round unseen for the whole day. At one point, we could hear it rusting about in the flies beneath one of our desks. We kept the doors tightly shut to make sure it didn't escape and bother the rest of the building, and kept our legs off the ground wherever possible. We hadn't caught it by the end of the day, but when I came in the next morning, the clerk who discovered the rat showed me what he found when he arrived in the morning. The rat was huge, about a foot long at least. It had gotten stuck in one glue trap, but according to him, it had nearly escaped by the time he arrived. He had to stick a second glue tape on his back to contain it. It was in a cardboard box, fully bound in the glue, and it was performing as ejection, and the smell was intolerable. Another clerk moved the box outside, near some big dustbin near to the toilet for the cleaners to deal with. The smell didn't leave the office for the rest of the day, although by evening we had mostly grown accustomed to it. At night, I had to stay late after everyone else had left because of an urgent request. I finished the job and went to take a piece before going for dinner. I passed the rat, which wasn't dead yet. In fact, it was shrieking louder than before and thrashing extremely hard. I considered putting it out of its misery, but I didn't want to have the rat brains on my boots, so I left it screeching and breathing. When I came back from the cookhouse, there was a curious silence in the corridor. I went to get my toothbrush so that I could brush my teeth and go to sleep. And when I passed by the toilet to notice that the rat was gone, it had been separated from the trap forcibly with a large part of its tail and a foreleg left behind. There was a fine trail of blood droplets that led to the stairway behind the fire door. I froze. A snake or even a stray dog that somehow wandered into our building through an open door would have gotten trapped in the traps. But someone who wanted to get rid of the rat would simply have taken the box. No, this was something strong enough to rip the rat from the glue without getting stuck. And yet I realized with a chill, something smart enough to open the door. It was already dark outside. I didn't want to risk running into whatever had taken the rat, but I had no choice but to sleep in camp. I made sure to double lock the office door before I slept that night. There were no disturbance that night. Whatever had taken the rat didn't try to get into the office, and on the several occasions I went to the toilet, I didn't see or hear anything. Still, I only managed to get 3 hours of sleep before my alarm rang at 5:45 a.m. When the rest of the club arrived in the morning, I told them what had happened. The clerk who discovered and helped to trap the rat, let's call him Jay, went out of the office to look at the box. The blood had dried by now, and Jay followed it to the fire door, pushing it open and shouted, "Oi!" and beckoned us over. There were 5 of us in the office, including our Sergeant L, and we all peered through the fire door at the remains of the rat. A roughly 1 meter square patch of the landing was mistabbed with dry blood. The rat, glue and shit covered skin lay in a stinky, bloody heap on the ground, while its bones were scattered all over. It was as if someone had peeled and eaten a large, disgusting avocado and forgotten to throw the bits away. Oh gosh. One of the other clerk, K, laughed. Unlike me, K hadn't started off as a clerk. K had washed out from the SAF NCO training program after nearly tearing his foot off in a freak accident, and he was extremely pissed off about it. He spent every moment he wasn't required to work at the base gym, working to maintain the physique he was extremely proud of, and drove his own personal Audi to work every day. He was also one of those hyper-rational people who don't believe in ghosts. "Hey, 91 son, you sure you didn't do that?" I scrolled at him and shook my head. Seriously, Kay, that's not funny. Whatever this is, it might come for one of us next. Al thrust a broom and dustpan into Kay's hand. You think it's funny? You clean it up. Make sure you get all the bones. The rest of you, go get ready for the first parade. I see you downstairs. First parade was our morning inspection by the company sergeant major, a warrant officer. We were a HQ unit, and most of the enlisted men were clerk or storemen who were unfit for combat. So it wasn't as intense as you think. It mostly consists of us falling in on our little parade square, doing a couple of stationary foot drills, hendak taki, jabat hendak, or mark time being his favorite, handing him our attendant logs and listening to the usual reminders to salute officer, shave our facial hair, and keep our uniforms neat before falling out. The sergeant major was friendly and would usually let us off to eat breakfast before the day began, and he would go to the smoking corner for a cigarette. And I decided to ask him about the rat, and so we followed him on the pretext of having a smoke. Hey Jay, hello, didn't know you smoke, 91 son. No, in Jay, I say not often. So, why are you here? In Jay, last night I stayed in and I saw something weird in HQ. I could see his mouth thin out. We caught a rat with glue traps and we left it for the cleaners to take away in the morning. Something took the rat out of the glue trap, went past the fire door and ate it in the stairway. Peel the skin off, add all the meat and pick the bones clean. His expression changed and he looked less concerned than puzzled. Oh, I've been in the army for 25 years. I've been all over Singapore. And I never seen something like this. Must be some kind of wild animal. What? Jay and I chatted with the CSM until we finished our cigarettes and left to grab a cup of coffee before returning to office. The rest of the day went by without incident. The smell had finally disappeared from the office. We each had a few tasks to do, but thankfully, nobody decided they wanted something at the last minute, so it looked as if we could leave on time. Jay told K, L, and the others about what our CSM had said, and we all decided to stay back that night to find out. We also decided we have to go to our office manager, Lieutenant F, about this. Lieutenant F was a bored polytechnic graduate who signed on for another 2 years at the end of his term as a conscript because he didn't have the grades to go to university and wanted a bit of money to start his own business. What that business was differed every couple of weeks. He was a decent guy, but he was already counting down the 3 or so months he had before he could leave. He spent most of his time on his smartphone researching the latest business trends or in the gym with Kay and always left on the dot at 6:30. He didn't seem like he will be particularly helpful, but he was the highest ranking person in the office and we felt that we had to tell him. Oh, that was literally all he had to say when he heard my story. Oh, sir, you haven't seen anything like this before, have you? No, it's probably just an animal. Yeah, not particularly helpful. Al took over the conversation and asked, Sir, can we all stay behind tonight to find out what is it? I won't order you not to because I don't think there's anything, but my official advice is safety first. Also, no in-cam photography, and I don't want to see any picture of it. I will not be staying back with you. Great. After last parade, we fell out and returned to office. Lieutenant F had already changed into civilian attire and left. L gathered the rest of us as well as the 3 clerks from next door and their Sergeant G to brief us on the plan. L had secured a large bag of meaty leftovers from the base canteen. This was a different place from the cookhouse. You could get as much better food, but you have to pay for it. The canteen auntie had been a little reluctant to give it to him, but he was a charming guy. All the senior officers and the CSM had packed up and left, so we will be alone. We placed the leftover on some paper plates we found in a supply closet and leave them in corners of each of the building's 5 floors. 4 of us will simultaneously patrol the baited locations in 2 pairs at 20 minutes interval, with a pair starting from the top floor and working our way down, and a pair starting from the bottom floor and working their way up. L and J would take turns on each patrol. There were 2 stairways. We sweep each floor in opposite directions, entering through one stairway and leaving it through another. We had our berets on because the crest we used was supposed to be blessed by Singapore's 4 major religions and effective at repelling spirits. This was as close to actual military shit as I gotten. I'm not going to lie, I was excited. The first patrol started at 7:30 p.m. after the dinner and after we had laid the plates. L and J will start from the top, with 2 of the clerks from next door going from the bottom. I was left in the office, which was on the 3rd floor, with G, K, the last clerk from my office, M and the other 2 clerks from next door, O and P. K sat at his desk, polishing his books while I made small talk with the rest. M was just an average guy. He had severe eczema and was always picking at his skin. There was an unspoken agreement among the rest of us to only let him sit in his own chair because we didn't want little skin flakes on the rest of us. O was a senior from my junior college whom I seen around and on the track team. Unfortunately, he was also congenitally deaf in his left ear, and that disqualified him from compact. He already secured a place to study medicine at Cambridge and was due to leave later that year when his term of service was up. P, meanwhile, was one of those people who were truly brilliant but didn't do well in Singapore's pressure cooker of an education system. If he hasn't lost an eye in a motorcycle accident in his polytechnic years, he would have made a great officer. He was caring and genuine business-minded, unlike Lieutenant F, and planned to start his own marketing business after graduation. G, I didn't know much about him. He has been posted in a month before and was in a slightly higher fitness category than us, but like L was, but still unfit for combat vocation. He seemed rather quiet and was fiddling with a pen he found on M's desk. O was telling us about a girl he met at Zouk, a local club, the Friday before we heard a sudden screeching sound and a bang. M started, ducked under his table, while P snatched his beret from his pocket and held it up like a wand. G meanwhile turned swiftly towards the window where K's desk was. K had put his books down to look out the window. It was just a car. Somebody BMW had sideswiped one of the bullets outside HQ for some reason, leaving a dent in his side. We could see the irritated driver, a well-built soldier with grey hair, who looked pretty high-ranking, get out to inspect the damage and shake his head before getting back in and drive away. Wow, that is some seriously bad driving, he quipped. G looked deep in thought. That's an expensive car and a senior commander. It's not raining outside. It wasn't raining earlier. There's nobody else on the road. That couldn't have been bad driving. But I'm not going to speculate on what is it. LJ and the other 2 clubs soon returned from their first round of patrols with a bored look on their face. They swept the building once from top to bottom, and none of the meat had been taken. After a quick summary of their findings, the next patrol began. G and I started our patrol from the bottom right stairway that is of the building's main entrance, while K and O worked their way down from the top left stairway. The first floor was pretty empty. It was just a bunch of locked rooms and the HQ ops room, which was sealed behind a thick metal door. There were duty staff in the ops room at all times, so it was unlikely the thing could go in there without someone raising alarm. We ended up just checking the plates which were still full and then giving each of the doorknobs a quick tap to make sure that they were probably locked. Probably locked. This thing might have been able to open door, but picking a lock was something else entirely. Our inspection finished, we went up the right stairway and headed to the second floor. Halfway up the first set of stairs, G motioned for me to pause. 91-san, do you hear that? I strained my ears, trying to hear what he heard. All I could hear was the soft drone of the building's air conditioning system and the calls of the late evening birds. There again he whispered, and this time I heard it. Soft, scoffing noises. Headed down the stairway. We ran to the landing of the next floor and looked up at the next flight of steps. We raced at the ready to drive off whatever came at us. A single oily paper plate drifted down the stairway from at least 2 floors above, bouncing off the railings and scoffing softly. Shit, G hissed. 91-san, call the office. We need 2 people in the stairway right now. Get them to check the 3rd floor plate too. While I rang our office number and spoke to L, G took out his phone and called O, who picked up immediately. Oh, we are in the right stairway. The plate's been taken, but no contact yet. Have you seen anything? G listened to O report and sighed. Alright, if you haven't seen it, then it's probably on the opposite side from you. It's somewhere between the 3rd and 5th floor. Hold position, keep 1 man in the stairway and 1 man looking out for it. And be careful, stay on the line. L sent M and P to the stairway. They entered from the right doorway onto the 5th floor, shaking their head. M texted me to say the plate that had been taken wasn't from the 3rd floor right corner, and that the 2 of them hadn't seen or heard anything unusual on the 3rd or 5th floor. G updated O to say it was probably on the 4th floor in that case, and asked me to text M and P that information. G turned to me. O says it's not come out of the stairway on his end, so it seems to be on the 4th floor landing. We got this thing cornered. You ready? I have a beret in my hand and a stupid amount of confidence. Hell yes, I whisper. Then someone on the 4th floor below. Gentlemen, who said you can smoke indoors? 3 things happened almost simultaneously. G urgently whispered through the phone. Oh, what happened? K texted me to say, CSN came back. I don't know why. Saw us from the lift and think we were smoking in the stairway. Confirm sign extra. Signing extra referred to being issued extra duty as punishment. The door on the 4th floor stairway slammed open and there was a loud scrambling sound as something dashed across the hallway straight towards our company sergeant major. Inject, behind you! G and I burst out of the stairway just as O shouted his warning. Our company sergeant major didn't even flinch as he turned around to regard the beast that was charging at him. He took 1 step towards it, twisted around, and delivered a roundhouse kick directly onto its head with his heavy leather boots. The thing slammed into a wall and scrambled to get up. He casually walked over, stood on his neck with 1 boot and his front limbs with the other and roared at it. Bloody hell! Understand? He turned to us and we knew it was our turn to get roared at. Gentlemen, come over here now! We gathered around the kicking, struggling thing our CSM had taken down with terrifying ease. It looked like it was made of rattan with a stick-like body about 4 feet long, 4 spindly limbs and a stiff tail. Its front legs ended in long, sharp fingers, while the back was 4-toed like that of a pigeon. Its head was round, with space for 2 reflective bright eyes and a large jaw full of splinter-like teeth. At this point though, we were more afraid of CSM than whatever this was. G, if anyone else is involved in this mess, get them up here now. The rest of you, empty your pockets. Every one of us hurriedly turned our pockets out as G called the office. And while the rest came, he made them empty their pockets as well. The creature hissed at the clinking of keys and coins, and our CSM pressed even harder on his neck until he heard a snap and he went limp. He turned to either side, examining the contents of our pocket. Are you all freaking stupid? You didn't know what you were chasing, and not one of you brought a freaking weapon. And pipe up, Inject, we don't, your office doesn't have a penknife. Your office doesn't have scissors. Your office doesn't even have a hole puncher. For goodness sake, use your brain. Our CSM kicked the thing twice to make sure it was dead and stepped off to take a closer look. It was already starting to disintegrate, with his head and arms broke off when he removed his boots. 91 son, this is the thing you said at the rat, right? What the hell do you think you were looking for? I shook my head. A ghost, Inject. That's why we only have berets. Walao, which is a Singlish expression that indicates aspiration. The dead creature quickly disintegrated into a pile of brown dust upon death, which we took it as a sign that it wasn't part of this world. The dust smelled like leaf litter and rot. Our CSM made old sweep it up, sealed it in a garbage bag, and threw it into the bin. And then he brought us into the office, which he had apparently forgotten to lock, thus explaining his return to camp. Does anyone else know about your little adventure? Yes, Inject, L replied, but only Lieutenant F. We told him that we were staying back to find out what it was, and he just said to be safe. Good, at least you know how to get permission. He sat behind his desk and glared at us before his expression softened. Gentlemen, our dear 91 son came to me this morning and told me about this thing. I was curious, so I called up some of my buddies from other units to see if they knew about it. I only got one answer from one guy who had seen something like this at a chalet in Changi a couple of weeks ago. He tried to catch it, but he ran away. Do any of you live in Changi? K, the hyper-rational audit driver, raised his hand. Check your car now. L, go with him and take this just in case. Our CSM handed L a heavy flashlight. L and K took the flashlight and left while we waited in the office. The sound was coming from the ceiling. Everybody out! As we hurried to the door, he reached into his file cabinet and took out an army-issue parang. I wasn't too surprised that he had something like this in the office. Warrant officers tend to accumulate a lot of weird stuff in their years of service. We just about closed the door when something fell through a cloud of white cardboard dust and our CSM swore. There was a wet thud and a loud sequel as he head into the things he had burst through the ceiling. Freaking rats. L and K returned from the car park. There had been nothing suspicious in the car or on it, so I guess K hasn't let the stick thing hitch a ride into camp. It must have lived in the dense jungle that covered part of our base, or at least somewhere on the ground where nobody else has seen it. For putting ourselves in danger, we all had to sign 3 extras. But that was it. I don't mind too much, though 3 wins was a small price to pay for discovering something like this. Lieutenant F never believed us. A few months later, I ORD, which means operationally ready discharge. This is what happened when your 2 years of service is up. Almost everyone involved, except for M, had already ORD by then. After collecting my civilian ID and changing out of my uniform for the first time, I visited CSM as part of my farewell tour. He was still in the same office, although his ceiling had been repaired by then. He shook my hand and congratulated me on finally getting through 2 years as a national serviceman. He asked if I wanted to go for a smoke, and I accepted his offer of a cigarette. We were standing outside the smoking corner, chatting until when we almost finished our cigarettes. He took a quick look around to make sure nobody else was there and motioned me to come closer. He leaned over and whispered, K and I are on a day one, son. Things are changing. Oh. So that's the end of the story. So there was something weird that appeared in one of the Singapore camp based on a true account. So but it wasn't something that was publicized due to its confidentiality. So demons are present. So if you have any special supernatural incident you'd like to share, you can just feel free to contact me. Hope you will like my channel, my podcast. Do subscribe to my channel to hear more interesting stories. Thank you.